Welcome to the Life as an Observer podcast. My name is Ryan Bean. I am your host in self-observation. This podcast is an exploration of physical and non-physical self through discussion around yoga, meditation, self-improvement, self-realization, and practices that elevate the mind-body-soul connection. Let's start observing. Welcome to the Life as an Observer podcast. Today I have my friend Braden Brunnhoetzl, amateur mycologist, an explorer, a creator of all things, a hunter, a gatherer, a psychonaut, and really just an awesome guy. And today we explore, well, at least we started to explore some of the ideas about functional mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms, but really the talk evolved into a podcast about world issues and the way that we perceive the world around us. After the podcast recording, I started to think about what was our target message, and I really think that it was about when we move down this path of awakening, you can't go back to sleep. Once you've sort of opened your eyes to the way that things are, you can't go back to the way that the facade that is being portrayed, or the way that we were supposed to learn it from our schools, from our governments. It's kind of like the story that I've heard about Ananda my Ma, who was called the God intoxicant, where she started to act differently. Maybe in the Western world would be called crazy, but yet in India she was embraced and loved, knowing that she was on this path to her enlightenment. But it was an awakening process that was a little bit uncomfortable. And many of us, when we start to walk this path, find ourselves in a place of God intoxication, where we see the world differently and we want to make changes to everything. And yet all we can really be in charge of is our own healing, our own journey, and living the life, as Mahatma Gandhi said, making our life our message. I really hope you enjoy this talk from this podcast today that I did with my friend Braden, who lives up in Alaska. In his world travels, we're going to go through some of the different mushrooms that are really important to in our ecosystem, and how the mycelium complex is built, and how different mushrooms grow, some of the medicinal or psychoactive mushrooms, and how they open up different realms of consciousness. Really fascinating stuff, and really I wish we could have talked for hours, but I've been trying to keep the podcast to a certain time limit, but I wish we could have talked for hours. So I think I'm going to have Braden back on the podcast maybe in the near future to continue this conversation, a part 2, if you will. Also, before we begin, I just wanted to thank everyone who's been supporting the podcast through the Patreon page, patreon.podbean.com. Also, I just released a book that you can find on Amazon. The SS Meditation Goes to the Moon. Those who have been purchasing that really helps fund what we're doing here on the podcast. And I think I might maybe even do a small reading in future podcasts of the book. I've also created an Etsy page, which is my ssmeditation.etsy.com. Lots of mindful apparel, if you will, just breath work and lungs and different things for the fall and different things to support the SS meditation. I have some shirts that are about abundance and some that are about being calm and meditation and mindfulness and breath work. And you can find those all over at the ssmeditation.etsy.com page. I'll put all the links down below. We refer to a few organizations in this podcast, which I'll also refer to in the notes, so you can support them, or just to look up what their messages are, like Akiak and the Divine Assembly. Thanks for following along today, and I hope you enjoy this podcast with my friend Braden Brunnhoetzl. What's up, Braden? What's going on, man? What's good?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to be home.
I hear you.
Yeah, I've been.
So you're back in Alaska, back up in Palmer, Alaska, and where the lights are. The northern lights are shining upon you and offering a nice green glow. either that or you're hibernating for the winter. We're not sure, but you're definitely back in the zone. And as I understand it, you are transforming the home in which you were in into a hostel for visitors, for travelers, for retreats, and all things
Yeah.
good. Is that still in the works up there?
Yeah, that's still in the works. And I'm trying to get it like the ball rolling, you know? My parents have a little bit of stagnation because they're in ingrained habit patterns from
Yep.
past experience, as all of us have, you know? And
Yeah.
so that can be challenging to navigate sometimes. And so what has been going on for me this past week has been just out of this world. Like I've been not me, there's something moving through me that's been manifesting things left and right.
Well, you
And
woke up this week in Mexico, right? And now you're back in Alaska. So you've been on either. So I'm right in the middle. I'm still been in Utah. I was actually planning a Mexico trip to come down that direction, and I still am. I'm actually looking at going near San Pancho, and I'm going to be down in the Baja Peninsula in April, just doing a little bit of work, doing a little bit of vacation, and yeah, I'd like to get back up there to Alaska. I know I got to give our listeners a little bit of background history here, so then we can jump into everything that's happening. But I
yeah.
came up there over the summer, and we did a little road trip. We went down to Girdwood, and we got into the Portage Glacier, which was amazing. I was there with your mom, my beloved, and a few others, and then we went down to Seward, and we got into some water down there. I watched it rain a whole lot, and then we headed back up to Palmer and Wasilla, and you and I jumped into the delicious Hasher Pass water together.
Oh, that
Uh,
was a beauty.
that was a good day. It was a really good day, and I really enjoyed all of my dips there. I think there's something really special about being at particular latitudes, in general.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, when you get above a certain latitude, you feel a different connection to the cosmos, and when you get below a certain latitude, there is another connection to different cosmoses. I think they talk about the Tropic of Cancer just being this portal,
Yeah.
if you will. And I know that you do a lot of work with mushrooms, and it's funny you brought up chaga because I was just doing a veterans retreat last week, and we drank a chaga tea every morning. From a powder that I wasn't as fortunate as when I was up there when you were making me the beautiful tinctures with chaga and having those in our tea every day. We just had like a chaga powder that we would mix, and I added like a little non-dairy creamer, and just made me feel
Right.
better. Made me feel really good. And I think that the especially fungi in its purest forms has become a way for us to bring in the way we manifest, to change our vibration, to even tap into areas that we didn't know really existed within us. And I would
Yeah.
love to hear about how you said there's some moving and shaking happen. Talk to me. I see a big hunk of chaga standing in front of the camera here. Um, and I'd love to hear how you are using these medicines, which we're going to get into the difference in functional mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms here in a minute, but how you're using these mushrooms to navigate your current state from one side of the globe to the other. So tell me
Uh,
what's happening.
so I've really been resorting to the mushrooms recently to ground me because the mushrooms are of the earth. So chaga, for example, it's really slow growing, and I've been moving really fast. So I've been tapping into the chaga essence because chaga takes like 3 to 5 years to grow. And so that's why we're working on some sustainability projects to make sure that chaga is being sustainably harvested. And it can't be cultivated in the general lab sense, as in you can't cultivate chaga in a lab like other mushrooms like cordyceps or oyster mushrooms or lion's mane, which
Is
all can be.
chaga a really hard mushroom? I mean, when I felt the pieces of chaga, they're rock hard. Are they like that by nature, or that they that like that after they dry out?
Yeah, the chaga is rock hard. And the chaga is actually technically not a mushroom. It's a mycelial conch. It grows on the
Okay.
side of birch trees. And mushrooms are the reproductive mechanism of the mycelium, which is the neural network that is in the ground, that is connects the trees, that communicates trees together, connects trees. And so the mushroom is only the reproductive mechanism because it disperses the spore. And
Gotcha.
the mushroom of the chaga is really rare. The fruiting body is the technical term. And the fruiting body of the chaga is pretty rare to see. Like, it only happens every so often, and I think there's only a few pictures of it.
Interesting. So they're pretty elusive, the chaga fruiting body, but so you're using that to slow down because everything has been moving really fast for you.
That's right.
And I hear that. It's interesting. I mean, there's so many. The world moves fast. The world in general moves fast unless you live in rural Alaska sometimes. The world moves fast really everywhere. And what was that? There was a movie that came out in the 1980s, and it was called I think it was called Better Off Dead. I think that's what that one was called. No. This was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's what the one was. And he
Oh, okay.
basically in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he said the world moves really fast, and if you don't take a moment to look around, you might miss it. And that was
Exactly.
kind of the quote for it is we don't always take a minute to look around, and we usually end up missing the essence of what life really is because we're so caught up in, I don't know, the silly details, the really
Yeah.
silly details, the ones that really don't make that big of a difference in the long run, but yet we call them so important, or or we get anxious about if we'll complete a task properly. But really, in the grand scheme of things, if we were to take a bucket, let's say, a bucket that you would go foraging with, right? And I would ask you to fill it up with a bucket full of anxiety and just bring it back to me in your foraging, could you fill that bucket up? And the truth is, no, you couldn't.
Yeah.
There's no tangible thing that's called anxiety.
Uh-huh.
It's our manifested mind, what we believe it to be. And so we utilize the tools that we have to calm what the yogis call the chitta. The chitta is the whirlwind of our mind, this place where we store data, And just like the mycelium complex stores data about what it's supposed to, fruit eventually, and what it's supposed to produce, we store all these feelings, thoughts, emotions, all this stuff, and we don't always express it. So there are some mushrooms that are functional, and there are some that are medicinal. And I'd love to hear your take on that, because I think that the medicinal mushrooms take us beyond the manifested piece into maybe another realm of existence that we can experience by utilizing the medicine. And I just would love to hear your view on functional versus medicinal.
So I think those are just like you're talking about. I really appreciate what you said about getting caught in the details, and I really struggle with that, you know.
Hmm.
And because my brain works so meticulously and all the time, and it's like I just need a time to relax and calm down and look around, like you were saying. And that's where the mindfulness comes in, because if I don't have any mindfulness, I'm not going to notice any mushrooms, and I'm not going to hear the message that the mushroom is telling me where it's at, because it will speak. It speaks in the energetic form, like the bucket analogy. It
Yeah.
speaks in non-tangible form. But if you're quiet enough, you can hear. So the difference between functional and medicinal mushrooms, I guess I would make the discernment of the way that the mushroom has been processed and extracted. it's possible to create like pharmaceutical grade medications from natural products. It's called natural products chemistry. And so that is the act of extracting the mushroom and pulling out the beneficial compounds that are locked within what's called chitin inside the mushroom. That's why this chaga is rock hard. It's got what's called chitin, and it's the same, I believe it's the same material that crabs make their shells out of. And
Oh, wow.
so it's really hard. And so the human body cannot digest chitin. And so that's the purpose of the extraction process, is to make it more bioavailable, which means that it's more easily absorbed into the human body. And so that's where I'm at in my phase right now with the mushrooms. I'm trying to acquire the lab equipment so that I can produce these pharmaceutical grade medications and give them to my family for free. Because if you guys haven't noticed, mushroom products are incredibly expensive. And
Yeah. And they come from the earth, and they should be, they should be available to many. And a lot of them are really delicate. I remember you had talked to me about cordyceps being just extremely hard to grow, and I know that you were working on an experiment with them, and I think it was thriving. I believe it was. Tell me about like the delicacy of cordyceps, and maybe why they are so delicate, and maybe even what some of their value is. Like what do we use cordyceps for?
well, cordyceps are really unique because they are a parasitic fungus and they grow naturally in the wild on insects. And that's they will take over an insect and make it go towards water. It basically controls its mind and brings it towards a water source so that it can release its spores and distribute its spores. I believe that's cordyceps, because like Cordyceps militaris, there's various different strains of cordyceps, and what's most commonly cultivated is Cordyceps militaris, and it's most commonly cultivated on brown rice. And it's actually not that difficult to cultivate, because you just have to have the conditions set up properly, because Cordyceps is a cold lover. It thrives at like 62 to 65 degrees. And these mushrooms actually create they're biothermal generators. So that is also something that could be utilized, that I just thought of right now, is that if we had big tubs of mycelium that were just fermenting and doing their thing, they're generating heat. And if we had those in a building, it could help to heat the building, because I've touched jars of mycelium and they're warm to the touch. Like they will get to 75 degrees in room temperature.
That's interesting to think about, because many trees, especially where you live, go through a deep burying every year of snow. And the mycelium is still very much present at the roots, and perhaps I'm making an assumption here, but perhaps warming the roots, keeping them from what we would know as a frostbite, or as a slowing down. I mean, we definitely will slow down. You notice this with the maple trees, certainly. As the maple goes through its process of distributing its sap, up at the trunk, because everything is being pushed up. It's kind of like our own vasoconstriction that happens when we get in an ice bath. There's like that constriction that happens, but it's doing that to keep our heart and our core safe, to keep us still functioning. And I feel like maybe the mycelium itself is saying, tree, you know what to do, but we're also going to give you a nice little blanket to help you through, and and sort of help you distribute, and still have a connection to maybe the other trees. I've even heard stories about mycelium being a warning system for when there's fires in the area, and how the mycelium will talk to the trees, almost saying, be prepared, get ready. And where trees will begin to like wilt, or they'll drop their leaves when they know that there's fire coming. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating. It's really a conversation, if anything, right?
Definitely. And they've been talking to me directly, and they've been telling me that there's suffering in the world. That's what I saw down in Mexico. You know, I saw that it was so easy for people to make money, but then we hear about all these atrocities being committed. We come back to the United States and we see there's school shootings happening. There's atrocities being committed in public places by people who are mentally unstable, unfortunately, because in my opinion, there's not a problem with guns. I've grown up around guns my entire life, you know?
Yeah, Alaska's, everybody's gonna be carrying them in Alaska because for wildlife. Yeah.
And I don't want to diverge into politics too much, but this is just, I'm talking about my direct experience in my life. And the mushrooms have told me that I need to stay put. I need to slow it down. I need to talk to people like you, the rocks in my life, the stones. And so they will speak to us if we're just willing to listen. That's the main thing. And we've forgotten that we're an extension of the earth. We've come up out of the earth. And people have forgotten that. And I believe that is the number one source of all the issues that we're facing today.
Can you go just if we can go a little bit deeper about communing or talking with the mushrooms? I mean, I know on a metaphysical level what that means, but I'd like to hear your personal take about. You mentioned it about 3 times now, and so I think it's an important topic for us to say, well, how are we listening? How are we talking? And how are we responding to nature? Not just, I mean, you can have a conversation and hope, but like I think it goes deeper than just like talking verbally. Can you kind of expand on that for me?
Yeah, it's a different type of communication, and I believe mushrooms have evolved the human race with the stoned ape theory that maybe people have heard of from Terence McKenna, that was popularized by Terence McKenna. I don't believe he actually came up with the theory, but I think he really just spread it widespread back in the day.
Yeah.
And so he talked about various things, and there's various ways to commune with the mushroom, and it's a non-verbal communication. You commune with the mushroom by cultivating them, by appreciating them, by noticing them. If you notice them, they'll start to give you a message. And if you start to consume them, they'll start to give you more of a message. And each mushroom has its own personality. Like the chaga is rock hard. Like it has the personality of the stone, but it's a living organism. It has the personality of the tree to being rooted down. There's other mushrooms that grow up high in the trees, and they have these spores that come out of the cap. Usually the spores are dropped from underneath the cap in the gills in traditional mushroom form, fruiting body form. And this chaga only produces its fruiting body every like 5 years or so. I'm not sure when it does it, but I don't know. I'm still learning. And cordyceps has its own personality. It's get up and go. Don't let people get in your face, and it has a testiness to it. But all these mushrooms, they work together to create a well-rounded human being. Because when you're taking all these different personalities into yourself, into your sense of self, then you have a well-roundedness. You don't have these jagged edges shooting out, which is what we have when people stay in their bubble and don't travel. They don't experience the way other people live, which this trip that I recently was on was like my first time solo traveling for more than a couple weeks, and actually like on my own accord. And I had to do some things to survive. I turned myself into the police in Mexico. In Puerto Escondido in Oaxaca. And because I was walking around and nobody wanted to make change. That was the problem. Nobody trusts anybody down there. They thought all my bills were counterfeit because I was walking around to the tiendas giving away pesos, buying a bunch of food and just giving it away because I didn't care about the money, because I was there to just spend money. But people didn't like that. They thought there was going to be some repercussion from that, you know, the organization at B that I may or may not be a part of was going to come and ask them to work for them, which I'm not a part of any organization. And so
it's an interesting place. I mean, I know that Puerto is, I mean, there's a lot of expats there. I mean, they're definitely near like La Punta and Zipatela Beach and stuff. That's a lot of expats there. You know, a lot of people traveling. People who are coming from other countries. You know, they're not, it's not, you know, heavily Mexican in some of those areas. Lots of people who are coming from America, or surfers. I know it's a big surf community there. People from all over the world go there to surf and whatnot.
yeah.
But you know, I haven't personally been there. It keeps showing up on my radar as a place that I want to go. Specifically Oaxaca. Yeah, let's do it. You know, I've been thinking that there's a place near Oaxaca City, and I believe it's where Maria Sabina kind of had her home in Mexico. And I know that there's a community where psychedelic or psychoactive mushrooms is, I wouldn't call them legal, but they're not criminalized in this particular city. And I don't know if you even know the name of the city. I don't recall it off the top of my mind.
Jimenez.
There you go.
That's where Maria Sabina is from.
Gotcha. Yeah, and they just don't persecute there because of it's kind of a tourist. A lot of people come there just to commune with the mushrooms, which is great. But then also, I think that there is a reverence that might be lost when you take you know, mushrooms which have psychoactive properties and turn them into a recreational tool. And that's where it gets lost. You know, a lot of us may have experienced mushrooms at a festival or while listening to music or whatnot, and that's fine and dandy but I don't know that you have this certain reverence that the mushrooms not only deserve, but I think require if we're going to go to a deeper level of understanding of them. You know, I know that you and I have talked a lot about different mushrooms that have their own personalities. I know where you are, the Amanita right now is probably going crazy. The Amanita muscaria. I don't know if it's past its season, but I know in the fall they go pretty crazy up there. And they have
past now, but there was an abundance. There was an abundance.
I saw a video of Paul Stamets showing off the Amanita maybe even a week ago. I don't know where he was, but massive ones, really big ones. And he was telling the stories, you know, the Santa Claus story that many people are familiar with, and the Christmas story. And I truly do believe, I mean, I don't mean to put it in a comical terms by any means, but I think that a lot of our legends and a lot of our folklore have been influenced by the plants that we live around. Even if you look at ancient petroglyphs and you look at, you know, even some of the drawings in the Mayan temples, the pyramids, you look at places in ancient Egypt, and they're describing things with mushrooms. And there was a book, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. It was called The Immortality Key by Brian Muscaro. Yeah, Brian Muscaro wrote that, and it was basically about the Eucharist being ergot, you know, having ergot in it. And ergot, which we know as the primary or the original man-made component of LSD. So we know that as a thing, that's what Sandoz used when they were making the first LSD components. And that's showing up in all these different pottery. It's showing up in pictures and carvings, this particular ergot mushroom, and in these cups, which look like, for all intents and purposes, the Holy Grail. So that's what they look like. They look like the Grail, and people were drinking out of them and communing with them until religion got a hold of it and said, we don't want the people to talk to God on their own. They need a priest. But you and I know, we can talk to God when we want to, and we do that.
That's the dynamic of control, baby.
Yeah.
People want control. Contraindications. You know, it's got control has contraindications.
Yeah,
because
it does.
not control, it's control over other. That's where you go wrong. When you try to control someone else, you're creating an issue, and you're creating an environment for things to go wrong, things to go in a way that is not what we're trying to cultivate with this new revolution that's happening. There's a revolution happening on the planet, and it's a peaceful one. And it's a one where people are going to recognize that, yeah, Jesus Christ did make the blind see. And he did that through Amanita muscaria mushroom. He did teach people to forgive them for they know not what they do, because they just don't know. That was my experience here recently. Is I've been meeting a lot of people that they simply cannot understand the concepts that I'm trying to explain to them. And that's my fault, because I'm not explaining it well enough. I need visual tools. I need books. I need people like you, Ryan Bean, to tell people how it is. Because not everyone's going to take my word for it, because I have a past that is maybe not the prettiest. I've been addicted to drugs in the past. I've not been addicted to hard drugs. I think all drugs are just chemical compounds, and that they need to be treated as objects, not as entities, even though they are.
Yeah, there's certainly a difference between narcotics and tryptamines. I mean, there's definitely a difference in how they affect us, and maybe the long-term effects of them. You know, I'm in my clinic now. I work with ketamine mostly because it is currently the only FDA approved medicine that we can use in a psychedelic form for therapy. However, that's changing. That is definitely changing. And there are people who are awakening to the idea and know that there are other medicines, that we don't need to have, serotonin reuptake inhibitors to give us more serotonin. We can do that through golden teachers. We can do that through other beautiful tools, that we don't need a chemical compound, which first of all has some addictive qualities to it. You feel like hell when you don't take it. You can't sleep. You have problems with your sexual functions. There's all kinds of reasons why you wouldn't want to do that, and yet you could take a golden teacher, even in a microdosing form, and feel better. And we talked about this, that how the compounds need to be by a mycologist, somebody like yourself who is more understanding. People should listen, because I remember you had given me kind of a little talk about the lion's mane and how it loves being together with the psilocybin or the psilocin with the mushrooms. It's just how it sort of makes the experience better. It's kind of like mashed potatoes and gravy. Like it's you're like, they're just totally fine together. But what if you actually had chips and salsa rather than just salsa by itself? It makes a better experience. And people are just, give me a mushroom, and they pop it in their mouth, and you're like, no, there's a reverence and a love, and there's something that has to be looked at more than just like pop this in our mouth. Many people bless their food before they eat it, but do they have ceremony around mushroom? We hope they would.
Yeah, a lot of people are phony holy,
Yeah.
I've been there. And this is like doing the ritual, but you don't really believe in it. Like just dancing the dance, but there's no heart in it, And I've done that in the past. I didn't really grow up in a religious background, and I think that has allowed me to freely think for myself. But a lot of people don't think for themselves, unfortunately, and they don't access the resources that are available. I highly recommend this book. It's very technical, but it will tell you.
Can you read what it says? Because we're on the podcast here. It's
the Reality Switch Technologies by Andrew R. Gallimore. Psychedelics as tools for the discovery and exploration of new worlds. If we're going to go
Okay.
deep on psychedelics, this is the resource that we need to tap into. We need to tap into other podcasts such as Andrew Huberman, the Huberman Lab podcast. There you'll find all the information that Ryan Bean talks about in scientific, detailed form, broken down in simple terms for the people to understand. And this is the problem. People are not educated, and it doesn't cost money to educate people. But the people in the high towers want to charge the coin, because the people in the high towers also are creating the pharmaceutical medications that have all these side effects by design. So then they can treat the side effects with more medications. But
Yeah.
people have forgotten that we have everything we already need. We just need to look within and realize
we can
that
go.
the earth provides.
We can go down. I mean, I've recently been educating myself more on water, because I know that, you know, water is a just an important resource, probably the most important resource on the planet, if we really say it. That water is something that we all need, and we need access to clean water. We need access to untreated water, but it's still treated chemically. So we have a lot of water that has chloride in it, it has fluoride and all kinds of other ides and minerals that they add back into water. And essentially our water is dead. Essentially it's dead. Yes, it's liquid, but essentially it's not it's lost its living components of it. But it can easily be recharged, easily. I mean, so even dead water, if you vortex it, can be easily recharged. So it needs to be vortex. And there's a place here in Utah where I go to get my water. It comes directly from the spring, you know, just right up from the ground. It's beautiful, gorgeous water that stays aerated for hours. Like you can see air bubbles in it for hours and hours and hours. It doesn't go away. It's just this beautiful water. And yet it takes only a half-hour drive to go get it. So I go get it there rather than, you know, out of a hose somewhere on the side of a house, you know, that. And I really do believe, and this is us taking a deep dive here, that the governments in which we subscribe to, we're both Americans in this particular conversation, but there are other governments, you know, hundreds of them all over the world, who, just like the religions of past who took away mushroom access, or at least said that it was evil,
Shielded knowledge.
they are also adding things to our water to prohibit us from accessing a beautiful organism that lives within us called our pineal. Now, our pineal is really the center of where we connect to the mushroom medicine. I mean, there's other areas. I mean, we feel it in our heart, and we feel it in our pineal. We feel this connection that is beyond our physical realm. And I think when we believe, when we know, not believe, when we have faith and know that we are a spirit having a human experience, at that moment we can tap into the spirit of the mushroom, of the mycelium, of the organisms that are there to support us. And I really truly believe that regardless of your religious background, your spiritual background, or your belief systems in any God, source, or universe, that these tools were given to us in a way that we can commune back to that source of our being.
That's right.
And if we remove ourselves from the source of our being, or the connection that we have, I'm not going to say we have it. When we remove that, things like anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, and all these things show up, addictions, they show up when we're not as deeply rooted and connected as the mycelium that runs underneath our feet. And I think that we really need to go back to nature.
Amen. 100%. You know, that is just spot on. You got to go to the root of all these issues. We can go around playing whack-a-mole, trying to solve all these individual problems, but it's not going to work, because the root problem is we forgot why we came here. We forgot who we are. And we're so much more than this one bodily form. And these teachers are here to show us that. They're here to disidentify us with the body. The body can die, and that's fine. That's going to happen. and it will happen.
Yeah.
Because everything's changing all the time. These beliefs of control will die because they're form. Everything in form is always changing all the time and always dying and always being born again. And the problem is with this water situation, water's a human right. We're born onto this planet and we deserve to have clean water. Every human being deserves to have clean water, and it's very feasible. The problem is people want the control over other again, and they want the power, because the further the gap between the haves and the have-nots, the more chaos there's going to be. The closer the gap, there's still got to be a gap. We cannot resort to communism, and that doesn't work. We still got to have a gap, but we cannot let the gap get too big. There's always going to be people addicted to drugs. There's always going to be people using drugs. The problem is that the drugs are illegal, and then they get wrapped up into the prison industrial complex, and then they're unable to access the resources to get themselves off of drugs. I got myself off of drugs. I used methamphetamine for a short period of time, about 3 weeks. My friends may or may not have made it out. I have a friend, his name's Gunnar Swan. He was not too much of a friend of mine, but I knew of him. And another kid, Jordan Flowers. These kids were friends. And they knew the same kids. They grew up in the same area, I believe. I don't know. I didn't know them that well. But I had friends that were really good friends with them. My friend Alan had Gunnar Swan die in his arms as Jordan Flowers shot him in the back of the neck while he was on Xanax. This is real life, and people die, unfortunately, but it doesn't have to be that way, And these medicines are available. The knowledge is available. It's free. It's on YouTube. Huberman Lab, Dr. Rhonda Patrick. You can learn and empower yourself to take care of yourself. No one can do it for you. No one can get you off of drugs. No one can stop you from doing what you need to do to live a healthy life. It's a choice. And now I understand what Kanye West talks about when he says that slavery is a choice. At a certain point, it is. Because you've got to take your life into your own hands and learn to educate yourself. I don't have a college degree, but I've learned to understand these things. And there's certain people who don't want that knowledge out there, unfortunately. And these are the same people this is the same way of thinking that creates ideology as Hitler and power over other. And it's the dehumanization. When I was in Mexico, Coca-Cola sells all the water. Yeah. And they've got water in these plastic jugs, 20 liters. And they let them bake in the sun all day long on purpose. And then they sell it to the people, And there was a woman down there, a police officer, when I was at this police station in Oaxaca, in Puerto Escondido. She told me there's not any water. And I said, what are you talking about? What about all the water in the rivers? What about the rain? The rain there is incredible. I've never seen rain like that. It doesn't rain like that up in Alaska.
No, it just rains all day. Yeah. There it rains hard and strong.
Yeah, it rains hard and there's power in the land there. And I want to go back there and learn from the indigenous populations in the hills. And we need to respect their land. There's a lot of people there in Puerto Escondido that love Maria Sabina. There's a lot of people that really have a lot of hate in their hearts for her because they changed the way people live there. I don't want to change the way people live. I want to give people the choice. Do you want to live in a way where you're poisoning yourself and you just don't know, like ignorance is bliss because you just don't know? Or do you want to choose to do things a different way? You can do whatever you want. I just want to be in an environment where that can happen. I want to be
Yeah,
in an
there's
environment.
this term
Yeah.
called mindset work, you know. So like when we get into the cold, yeah, you can force yourself into it, right? You can suffer, or you can
Yeah.
make a mindset that says, I'm going in and I'm going to stay in. And the same thing is true with making any change in your life. I mean, we're talking about water, but we can go further than that. We can look at GMOs that are in our food. We can look at different dyes and colors to make them more appealing, if you will. I
Yeah.
mean, I would say probably the I don't know this. I don't know the actual fact on this, but I would say that like the Doritos and the, you know, all
Oh,
those different
sure.
colored, the flaming hots and all that stuff are very, very
Red.
popular.
Yeah, red number 40 causes cancer.
Yep.
They know it.
Yeah.
They still sell it in the United
Yeah.
States because there's people that make money off of people with cancer.
Yep.
Unfortunately, chaga cures cancer. Turkey tail cures cancer. I believe this 100%. And
Lion's mane too, right? Lion's mane is one of the ones that really has been known to be a cancer cure, isn't it?
I'm not sure, maybe, but
I know that lion's mane is something that Paul Stamets was giving his mother when she was diagnosed. If I remember right, he was giving it to her
yeah,
as a daily supplement. And in his stack, he does recommend lion's mane along with niacin, which I'm not the biggest fan of niacin personally. It just not, it makes me
yeah,
feel not so good. I don't
yeah.
enjoy how
There's an
I feel with it.
alternative to niacin, like the sauna. The purpose of niacin is that it opens up the vasculature in the brain. And there's some new research coming out with Dr. Rhonda Patrick has been talking about this. There's new research that maybe the Alzheimer's and dementia is not entirely related to the plaque theory, which is
Mm,
what lion's mane has been shown to break up the plaques in the brain. And but there's other things that are involved potentially, like that the blood vessels are atrophying due to our lack of activity. You know, the
mm.
indigenous and the people of the past used to walk and carry water and do all this. Now, today, we just sit around, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and
In
that's why
comfort.
we've got the
Yeah.
obesity problem. And so I think that's what's playing into it also is that there's the lack of blood pressure in the brain. Blood, the vasculature in the brain is stagnant in today's culture. It's not expanding and contracting like it used to because people used to go in the sauna and then they used to get in the cold water. They knew about this medicine, and somewhere along the line, we forgot. Somewhere along the line, we forgot a lot of things. There's Machu Picchu with these, I want to go there so bad, and the pyramids. There's these 100-ton blocks of stone
Yeah.
that are just bored out, solid blocks of stone. And they knew things that we have forgotten.
Yeah.
Or
I
so
haven't
it
been there
seems.
either, and I
Or
would
so
like
it
to.
seems, you know, not everybody's forgotten it. There's some people that know.
Yeah, I
I'm
would like to go there. I actually put it on my vision board early this year, my vision board, and it has a picture of Peru and an airplane. Now, the airplane itself is actually at a different airport, but it really doesn't matter. The mountains are in the background and it says Peru. And I'm definitely manifesting that too, because I think potentially, kind of entertain this idea with me, Braden, that as we became more comfortable, as we began relying upon things that are not connecting us back to nature, that certain knowledge has maybe been taken from the earth, if you will, or forgotten on from the earth.
it's been hidden.
Hidden, yeah. So it's been hidden in different ceremony and processes, and that's why to do something like, for instance, a sweat lodge. So that's something that I facilitate, and it's done in many cultures. There's lots of them. People have been doing sweats forever to reconnect, to do ancestral work, to go into the womb of you know, to go into the womb and heal, has in a way been hidden. You can't just go to your neighbor and be like, hey, let's build a sweat, because you don't know the knowledge to actually do it properly. Sure, you can go in there and sweat like a sauna. That's cool. but the actual medicine from many of that comes from song, from prayer, and then from the medicines. At least in the sweats, the inipis that I go to and lead, we use osha root, we use eucalyptus, we use lemon verbena, we use even lavender, and we use tobacco. Not as tobacco. And so it's very interesting when I talk about tobacco with those who are not connected to medicines, they think, but you're not a smoker, and I'm like, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I certainly partake in medicine. Yeah, and it's not done in that way. And so I'm really grateful for elders who are allowing these ceremonies, people like Maria Sabina, and elders who are allowing this medicine to go to other cultures, especially blended cultures that are Anglo-Saxon, who are Caucasians, people who are not, they're so far taken away from their roots. But so, you could ask somebody like, oh, I'm Irish and Scottish, but they don't really know their traditions that go along with that. Or, you could say that like every culture has had some sort of medicine. And so, for me being a blend of races, I am connected to the land that I live on, and I live in indigenous Native American land. This is certainly this is the Lakota, the Paiute, and the Navajo. Even the Ute and the Anasazi were here at one time. There's not many remnants of them anymore, but the Ute and the Anasazi were here. And so I connect myself to the medicines of the land rather than where I might have been way down the road ancestrally. I live where I walk, and this is the medicine that's provided to me. And when I'm in Alaska, I commune with Alaskan medicine.
Yeah, exactly. And we're of the earth. We're not our bodies. The people get so caught up on this, and people honestly are so racist. People are racist against themselves.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've been taught that. They've been brainwashed by society. They've been led to believe things about themselves that is not true. They've forgotten who they are. And we are all one,
Are you familiar with Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot poem? You familiar with that?
No.
Because you just said it in such a beautiful way. It's exactly like that. So if you're familiar with him at all, I'm going to put on my. I'm going to read this. I think it's a great. What you're saying is exactly what. Oh man, it's just beautiful. So let me just say this to you. So there was a satellite. It was called Voyager, right? So Voyager went out into space, right? And at one point turned around to look back at Earth. Okay, now regardless of what you believe about space or whatever, because I have my own interesting theories about space and how things function, and we're not going to dive too deep into that today, because that's a whole other concept about flat Earth and the firmament and everything else. But we're not going to get into that. But basically, in Carl Sagan, who was a member of this mission's imaging team, he was a psychologist. He was also like a scientist, really amazing. And when it looked back at Earth, it saw like this sun ray, and Earth was just this tiny itty bitty blue dot, right? You can barely see it. And he wrote about the photograph that was taken, and I will summarize it because it's a longer. I highly recommend you read it. But he said, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives on that pale blue dot. He talks about every saint, every sinner, he just goes through every particular scenario. And yet we find ourselves so distant when we talk about, for instance, what's happening in Gaza right now, right? How we're just so separated from that.
I don't even know anything about what's going on there.
Yeah, because you were in Mexico, yeah. But there's a lot going on, and we find ourselves so separated. Matter of fact, most Americans don't even know their neighbors. Let's just be real. You don't even know your neighbors. So if we don't know our neighbors, but yet we are all on this pale blue dot together, our ecosystem, which I can tell you, our ecosystem hasn't forgot that we're on a small little planet floating at, millions of, or thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles an hour, revolving around something and with a purpose. I really believe that we have a purpose of being here, that our ecosystem is absolutely perfect to sustain
100%.
life,
Yeah.
to sustain life, to the right amount of light, the right amount of water, the right amount of precipitation. And we know that humans, we think we're dominant here, but nature takes back things when
Not a
humans aren't around.
chance.
Yeah, nature takes it all back and goes, you know what, you're gonna try to mess with me. I was watching this
You're just
video.
gonna die off like the cultures of the past that
Oh
Graham
yeah,
Hancock talks about.
oh yeah. I was watching a video, and it was in San Diego, and it was basically this hill, and you could just watch the whole thing crumbling. The whole mountain came down, and it was just because wind and water had eroded it, and it finally just. And that's the kind of stuff that we don't get to see very often because we're so secluded from nature. In some ways we don't see it, but floods that happen. I went and visited a ghost town this week, and the ghost town, it was 1922, it had a flood in it and just took out the whole town. It was just like, you're done. It was a small town, but nonetheless, now it's a ghost town. I'm sure they're all over Alaska too, where there's abandoned buildings that just nature said, I'm taking this back. And
Yeah.
you don't have much of a choice. You're gonna fight it.
There's a couple of those around. There's one in Whittier where there's
okay.
I think that place has a bunch of asbestos in it though. And
oh yeah, don't go
really,
in there.
in Alaska, there's not very many old buildings. It's only been a state since the 50s. And so, and the settlers before that. So there's not old like American history here. Yeah. There's old Russian lineage. There's old Native Alaskan lineage here. And we're talking with the elders. My mom's talking with the elders. She's organizing elder retreats. And you all can come to the apiary hostel. It's still in the works. It's here in Palmer, Alaska. I've also got hostel in Girdwood, Alaska that I'm working on, that I managed for the past year and a half. So this is a shameless plug to what we've got going on here. And
no, I agree. I think the listeners need to. I mean, when I came out there to Girdwood, I mean, well, both of them. I was at both places, but just to see what out in the open, some of the mushrooms that you're growing, some of the permaculture that's happening, they're going back to nature rather than forcing. I don't know. I'll give you a good example. Like here in the desert, people trying to grow grass is silly. They try to grow grass, they overwater it, they fertilize it, they do all kinds of stuff. It's a wasted resource. And yet, but in Alaska, where it's wet all the time, at least in the summer, and that's environments where it's cooler, was where these mushrooms thrive. The Pacific Northwest, they thrive there. And so what we really need to do is move into something that I'm working on. I guess I could share it since we're plugging, but we're working on a big communal property here in southern Utah, where it will be what's called the 508. I believe it was called the Sovereign Nation, and essentially taking ourselves out of government's view and creating, by all essential purposes, a commune that allows there to be permaculture, that allows there to be water collection, which is not illegal, but is certainly regulated in the 50 states to collect water from rain. If you're using it for consumption, and being off grid in some states is not fully legal to collect solar power to power your life. They require you to be on the grid and give back your excess. I've been van lifing for 2 years. Yeah, I've been van lifing for 2 years, and my water, I've had not an issue. I've had power, not an issue. The only things that I've had difficulty with is regulating the areas in which my upbringing told me what comfort and discomfort were. So in the hot summers, I have to go through that work and go, okay, this will pass. In the winter, when it's really cold, I have to chop firewood, and I have a little stove in my van, and I have to feed it wood in the middle of the night. And that's just the way it is. It's just part of the process. And I think when we get back to nature, when we get back to in its most raw form, like you growing mushrooms on logs in the front of the hostel there in Girdwood, that is the beauty. Let's get rid of front lawns and let's put in front gardens.
It's such an illusion and a delusion. These lawns are terrible. You know, they're polluting the planet. People are using this Roundup glyphosate. Yeah, I think that's how you say that. And they're just the weeds. We got to get rid of the weeds. It's just the sickness of the mind. The weeds are ugly. That's a thought. The weeds are beautiful. The weeds are flowers. The weeds, we need the weeds. We need the flowers.
I was at the place in Palmer, and I had never seen so many dandelions in my life. That's where you're at now. But I'd never seen so many in my life. I was the most dandelions I've ever seen. And so we had to take pictures in front of them because we thought, how beautiful are these dandelions? They are everywhere. And, you know, for some people, they would want to spray them. I can't even imagine spraying all the dandelions that are on your property there in Palmer. That would take forever to try to regulate them, and the cost that it would, and the toxins, and the dogs would be out there rolling around in it. I can't even imagine how you would do that, nor would you want to. Collect the dandelions, use them medicinally. I know they have some medicinal benefits.
Yeah, dandelion root. I've witnessed some older Asian women out there in the heat, you know, this past summer / when you were around, they were getting at the roots of the dandelion. They were up in the hills, you know, where there was away from the road, away from the polluted, because we pollute the roads all the time. All this salt that goes on the road, it's terrible. Then it all floods into the water system, and then it pollutes the water system, and then it pollutes our salmon. So we've got salmon that are poisonous. There's a reason why tuna has a bunch of mercury in it. I don't believe it used to be like that. You know, I believe that's probably a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
And all of this, we human beings have the influence to and the reach now to control nature to some extent. We can control
temporarily,
we can control grows of lion's mane, cordyceps. We're now trying to work on inoculating chaga into the trees to cultivate chaga, you know. And the government is supposed to protect us. It's written by the founding fathers. It's written by the people that know, the Freemasons, you know, all of these sovereign individuals. We have sovereignty, but people want to take our sovereignty away because then they can make money. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you have some difficulty in uploading this. You know, this is some things I've been experiencing here recently, some difficulties with technology not functioning properly. But
yeah, I mean, that could be lunar events.
I'm willing to work with the governments. I'm willing to work with them. I'm on their side. We need governments. We need to maintain the peace. We need the police. We can't defund the police. We need to upfund the police. You know, the police need to be educated in what these things are. Dialectical behavioral therapy. You know, I've got a book around here, Marsha Linehan. You know, they need to be educated in what these things are. I went to the military office yesterday, talked to Staff Sergeant Torres here in Anchorage, Alaska. He just follows orders. You know, there's all these guys just follow orders, you know, and they just don't think for themselves, unfortunately. But we've got that right as human beings, and we need to take our power back. And I sound like I'm fucking being a revolutionary, but you know, it's a peaceful revolution. It's a peaceful transfer of power back to the people, back to the land, back to the earth. You know, it doesn't have the power.
Peaceful revolutions are amazing.
The mushrooms
There's
are
a gentleman.
amazing.
That's true. Actually, you know, I'm gonna after we get off this, I'm gonna be sending you a Venmo because I would love a package from you of some of the beautiful things that you're growing up there. I know that
Yeah.
there's a. I want to read you something that I think that will be pretty amazing because you're talking about a peaceful revolution. And there's a gentleman, you may have heard of him. His name is Mahatma Gandhi. And
Uh-huh. Hamaji.
Mahatma Ji, yeah. And so he, you know, he was asked, I guess, what his, by a reporter, you know, he was during his peaceful march, and he asked what his message to the world was. Like they were going to write it down. He's like, you know, we're going to write this thing down, and it's longer than this. I was going to read it to you. I know the essence of it, but basically, he said, "My life is my message." That's what he said. My life is my
Exactly.
message, and
Yeah.
you know, if we are expected to evolve, I would say that we've de-evolved more than evolved.
Oh yeah. And it's very powerful.
If we're to evolve to the level of what we see in Machu Picchu with the architecture and the technology, the communication, which I believe was telepathic in ancient Egypt.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I've
if we're gonna,
experienced it myself. You know,
yeah,
it's real. I've been able to visually see another human's brain,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
And if we're gonna get back to
while
that
using
level,
these plant medicines. But I need some guidance. I need people like you who are older than me. I need elders. You know, that's the problem in America. We've forgotten our elders. We've just shoved them into
yeah.
the old folks' home. You know,
Well,
it's
I think if we're going to get back to that
terrible.
level of where we're communicating to, you know, telepathically, if we're going to be building in the way that all these, you know, there's just too many synchronicities. I mean, if you look at the pyramids of Giza and their perfect alignment to Orion, and there's so many things that are not synchronistic; they are deliberate, and
Uh-huh.
and there's so much that we have lost, including our connection to the foods we eat, including the water we drink, including our daily routines. I was telling my partner, who you got to meet, I was telling Kate that, you know, I don't like to start my days earlier than like 10 a.m. ever, if I can, mostly because I would prefer to have my intentional activities in the morning so that I can be more connected, so I can be more deliberate, so that I can feel more um, that spirit that runs through us. If I am going to hurry up and jump out of bed and go do a task, I know that I'm going to feel slightly disconnected and probably a little agitated. But when I can
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and commune with you know, I usually drink a blend of mushroom teas, along with, you know, maybe I'll add turmeric or some other things that I know help me. And then I'll make sure I do my breath work. I'll do my ice bath. I'll do my meditation. And when I do these things, I feel more whole, and I feel more connected to what I'm manifesting. And I know that you had some questions about manifesting. You know, you were seeing a lot of things come into your life recently. Some wanted, some unwanted, right?
Yeah. And I'm willing to not talk about it, you know.
Yeah,
I'm willing to talk
yeah,
about it. I'm willing to not talk about it because we need to we need to be careful and ease into
yeah,
this, because a lot of people, their consensus reality is these bubbles that people live in. Their minds are fragile, and if they gain access to this knowledge, they could do some really aversive things, and you know, that is not what I want.
yeah. It's not, and yeah, not just what we talk about, but it's also what we think about. I think we are projectors by nature. We project energy,
Oh
and
yeah.
we can also receive it. But the problem is, many of us, just like we just talked about with our pineal, are calcified to the idea
Uh-huh.
that we are just as special, or I hate to say special is not the right word, as available to receive messages as priests, swamis, Jesus Christ, the Buddha. We're all, we all have access to that, and
Yeah. 100%.
it's written in our DNA. It's written within the fabric of our being. Just like the chaga knows to go to the birch tree to grow and thrive, so do humans know to get back to earth and rejuvenate. And I'd like to, maybe as we end podcast here, but just to actually offer, first of all, any final words. But I'm gonna do a little breath work together for all of our audience to reconnect to themselves. And I'm also gonna do like a little meditation, mostly with you as the inspiration, Braden, because feel as though that energy and you and I can connect on a very deep level here, but also share our passions with the audience, all those who are listening,
Yes.
and those who are wanting to learn more about mushrooms, and not just tripping out on mushrooms. That's great and fine and
Yeah.
dandy, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about making things sacred. We're talking about
We're talking
being,
about religious freedom.
the freedom to commune with things that may have an altered state of consciousness, just like ice baths has an altered state of consciousness. Getting into a sauna has an altered state of consciousness. Fasting has an altered state of consciousness. Long times without sleeping, altered states of consciousness. Eating a psilocybin mushroom, altered state of consciousness. And we are indeed worthy of that communing with God. We're worthy of
You
it.
got to wield it wisely. That's the main message. You got to wield it wisely, because these things are there and people know about them. Not a lot of people do. These are esoteric things. And so I want more people to know about it, but I want people to know about it in a way that isn't going to jeopardize their safety, their sense of well-being, because that can really happen. My friend merged his consciousness with mine under an experience with LSD, and I became terrified. I thought that he wanted to kill me. You know, I was in a bad trip, so to speak. I was in a bad environment, you know? And so I had to flee the situation. I had to get him away from me, because this is how the bad things happen. This is how the people jump out the window, you know, back in the day. This really happens, you know? This is not just propaganda from the government. The government is smart, very smart. And they know things that the people don't know about LSD, about everything like that, about dimethyltryptamine. They're studying all of this, and we need to work with them, because they hold the keys, literally. So,
well, you know, that the setting is, this has been told by many guides over and over and over, that, you know, when we don't have a reverence towards the medicine, with the mindset going into it first and the proper setting, that what can happen is a bad trip. So I guess I'll warn the audience, everything we're talking about, whether it be a functional or a medicinal mushroom, go in with guidance, because too much of something could also, you know, not be good. I don't know that. I mean, for the most part, your body will just purge what's not necessary. Your body knows what to do. However, there is long-term psychological effects that could come with that purging. That's what you hear a lot about with DMT and the ayahuasca ceremonies, that people actually are traumatized from their experience rather than healing in it, because of they had a bad setting. There wasn't the integration afterwards. So those who are listening and you're curious or you want to learn more, I highly recommend you seek out your local ENTHEOGENIC churches. They tend to be the best resources for ceremonial and sacred ceremonies. ENTHEOGENIC churches tend to be really well. I know you have one up there. Actually, I have the sticker of the one up there in Alaska.
Yeah, the organization is called AKEAC. It stands AKEAC. It stands for Alaska Entheogenic Awareness Council. And we're working with people who are changing the laws. I know people who have contributed to changing the law in Oregon. I have written some of the law that is there. This is fully possible. and it's going to happen one way or another. It's not, I hope it does not follow the path of cannabis, because cannabis has introduced another way for people to be asleep. You can be asleep when you take psilocybin. You can be asleep, or you can wake up, you know? That's,
Yeah.
it's in the
Yeah.
usage. The
Yeah, we have
usage
one
is
here
so
in
important.
in Utah. We have the ENTHEOGENIC church called the Divine Assembly, and I know there's one in California. It's just a matter of finding your local thing. And you're absolutely right about
Yeah.
cannabis. You know, I think that I went into a dispensary the other day, and there was 120 milligram edible, and
Yeah.
I was like, what in the world? Why would I want that? Why would I want that much in one
Yeah.
dose? That doesn't, I mean, and some people who are, I'm quoting, air quoting here, potheads would be like, yeah, that sounds fantastic. Give it all to me. But the truth is,
Yeah.
you,
Joey
you, you,
Diaz.
you have created such a tolerance to cannabis that it takes that to get you there, when really to commune with cannabis, to commune with it is actually a really good thing. To commune with it is wonderful. To have it as part. I have a friend of mine. She's down in San Pancho, Mexico, and she does. It's near Sayulita and Puerto Vallarta, but she does cannabis meditations and yoga, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous to know that it's still looked at as medicine and not as a way to get high. Like there was a time where I used cartridges, you know, and I don't vape. I think there's too many other products in those, and it's just way too damn strong. I'd rather just have the beautiful
Yeah.
flower and commune with it in the way that it was given to us by nature.
Yeah, and the thing with this is the hemp has so many uses.
Yeah.
It makes clothes. Like, I have clothes that are made of hemp. They're biodegradable.
Yeah.
We can make hemp plastics. I want to invest. It's already there. I don't have to invent anything. I'm not an inventor of nothing, of anything, you know? I don't invent anything. I just learn from who has come before me, who I was in the past, you know? Because I'm all of you and you're all of me, and I feel that, but a lot of people don't feel that. And
No, they feel disconnected and in their own worlds and their own dramas and their own stresses. And you know what's happening in Gaza or in Palmer, Alaska, or in in southern Utah doesn't relate to them, and so
yeah,
it gets tuned off. But yet we are we're all of the seed, if you will, and this is a seed that is
yeah,
the seed of life. And if we don't come together soon, I do believe that at one point there was a great flood, and that great flood was by
yeah.
design.
This is all prophecy. This prophecy is coming to pass. This is all written down in the Bible. My friends have been telling me about this. I didn't believe them at first, you know? I was like, just get out of here with that nonsense, you know? I don't have time. I don't have time for that. No, ain't nobody got time for that, you know? But we do have time. That's the only thing we have is time. We need to make time to stop and look at what we're doing, because we're killing ourselves, literally.
The only thing that doesn't change on this planet.
I want to talk about some things that are going on here in Anchorage that I'm trying to make moves on, but I am broke and I don't need money. I just need people's support and love and energy. And so in Anchorage right now, on 3rd and Ingra, there's been a homeless encampment there. My friend Apollo, he's all over the news. You can look him up. And ADN, look up ADN. He's got a grant from the state. He used to own the Bubbly Mermaid, a bar in downtown Anchorage. He's a mover and shaker, you know, and he's housing these homeless. The mayor told him that the homeless don't need water. That's what he told me. You know, the homeless don't need water. So he went and bought a fire truck with this grant money, and he wants to convert it into a bathhouse. My dad owns a plumbing and heating contracting company, a mechanical contractor. We can make it happen. I just need the love and support from the people around me. You know, we can get these people off the streets, reduce the crime. It's a real possibility. We just have
Does
to
Apollo
do it.
have a GoFundMe or anything like that that you can?
No, but I
Hmm.
have a Venmo, and you could Venmo Akiak. You need to look into Akiak.
Okay.
We need their support. And
So that'd be cool. You know, there's actually a company in Orlando, and I don't remember the name of them now. I'll have to look it up and send it to you later. Maybe if the listeners will chime in on comment on this. But there's actually in Orlando, they had taken old school buses and
yeah,
city buses, and they turned them into bathhouses, and they drove them around town to the different areas and used
yeah,
them as you know, showers. And they had a barber that would ride along and cut hair, and
yeah.
they would. I mean,
And
I think
get
it's pretty
people
cool.
jobs, get them back in society. You know, because
So
people fall into the cracks and they just stay there and they die. They overdose on fentanyl. They overdose. And we have Narcan freely available. We just need people who know how to use it. Everyone should have access to Narcan on every corner, but that's not the case because it's on purpose. You know,
yeah.
we have a
Well,
choice. We have a
as we get
choice.
back to nature, utilizing tools that we know work for us, I think we become more conscious as a collective. And that's where I think I'd like to kind of summarize this is, you know, as we utilize the tools that have been given to us by nature and where, you know, wherever we live, you know, we can notice destruction all over the world. We can notice pollution. We can notice, or we can notice that trees continue to grow and that mushrooms thrive,
Yeah,
and that we have so much. And as we become more conscious personally, we
yeah,
become more conscious globally. And I'd like to maybe offer this to our listeners and to you, Braden, is a way for us to commune together on a more of a, instead of a conversation, but more on a spiritual level together, the
yeah.
way we did when I was up there. Um,
Definitely.
you know,
Let's get into
I,
it.
I'd like to offer what we call a heart coherent breath, and I'm just going to do that and lead us right into a meditation. But um, so for our audience, you know, just a quick summary. You can, you know, the if you want to help out, I will put Braden's information in the comments below, and I will also put Akiak's information if you would like to donate or support what they're doing with ENTHEOGENIC medicine or helping the homeless. There's a lot going on, and really it's about becoming involved and caring more about the planet, caring more about your community, even locally, than caring about, you know, if your bills are going to get paid today or if your outfit looks okay. Really just thinking more outside of your personal situation and knowing that as a community we can thrive even though you may not have found your purpose or your dharma yet. You don't know exactly why you're here. You don't know what your purpose in life is yet, and that's okay. You don't need to know what your purpose in life is to be a conscious thinker. And so as you maybe close your eyes or sit down or lay down, as you decide to get settled, those who are, you know, listening to this as a recording, you may find that you're a little uncomfortable, maybe even with some of the topics we discussed today. You may find that they don't all resonate with your personal belief system because you may have been taught another way of life or in a different place, or you may have had more privilege, or even me saying you have more privilege might feel offensive to you. And that's a really great place for us to begin to explore, for us to say, okay, this is where I'm at today. This is where I've been at since birth. And this is where I could be in the future. As you decide that all you really are in this very moment is a soul having a human experience. That may be hard for some to grasp. I'm a soul having a human experience. I'm a soul having a human experience. Just like the souls that you hear about, who have been very influential on the planet, maybe the souls who have done great things, and you're saying, well, I want to do great things, but how do I do that? Well, it starts with your own personal consciousness And it starts with your passion. And as you decide to settle down with me and maybe close your eyes, if that feels comfortable, you can. If it doesn't feel comfortable, then that's okay too. Just taking a long gaze to the end of the room or something that's not moving. I invite you to begin to offer a breath that is yours, that is not a directed or guided breath. It's just you saying, I'm breathing now. I'm going to breathe in through my nose. Perhaps let it go down to your belly. And then release fully from top to bottom. Making a dedication here as you breathe in to not tell any stories, to just simply be with the feeling of breath coming and going. As awareness is the foundation to our positive change, let go of an exhale here, grounding perhaps your feet onto the ground, or maybe your back onto the bed that you're laying on. I invite you to breathe in to a pattern of 4 counts in, 2, 3, 4, and 6 counts out, all the way down, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in for 4, belly rises, the heart lifts. And then you release 6 counts all the way down. You can do the counting here. I want you just to breathe in this pattern, 4 counts in, and 6 counts out. And as you breathe in this flow, and releasing and grounding in this same flow, with maybe hundreds, if not thousands of people at the same time, breathing in with you and connecting with a purpose that is, I am here now. I am in this place now. And as you exhale, perhaps feeling the energy, maybe even the warmth underneath your feet. The earth is not just dirt. There is life force. There is joy. There is struggle. There is happiness. There is frustration. There is contrast. It all happens underneath our feet, a whole ecosystem. And as you breathe in, you recognize that feeling drawing up to and through you. And as you exhale, 6 counts all the way down, you release back love and connection and appreciation. I'd like you to stay with this rhythm of 4 counts in and 6 counts out. Just on your accord. Maybe you bring your hands to your heart now. This never-ending source of knowledge and life force that's within us. And as you breathe in, perhaps you feel the heart quicken. And as you exhale, you feel yourself, the energy grounding more. Breathe in for 4, 3, 2, 1. Now exhale for 6, all the way down. 3, 2, 1. Breathe in for 4. And out for 6, all the way down. Now with your hands possibly at your heart or just your awareness at your heart, I'd like you, even though you're using your nose, to imagine you're breathing in through the space near your heart, letting it go behind your heart into the space behind your heart. And as you release, exhaling through the space behind your heart, bringing it in to and through you in the front of your heart and out through the back of your heart. This place of compassion, of forgiveness, of love, of your sense of who you think you are. There was knowledge in your heart before your brain was ever created. Before it was fully developed, your heart was beating. Breathe in. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 6. All the way down. As you breathe in, there might be stories of ways that you would like to influence the world or how you would like your life to be blessed. Abundance, success, opportunities, health, joy, love. I'd like you to see if you can, with your exhale, release those stories. Release them all the way out. Just saying, I'm releasing these stories. And then breathe in again for 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 6. Quieting the whirlwind of the mind. It's still going to spin around inside your head. However, you can sit within the eye of the storm like we do within a hurricane. The eye of the storm, the place of peace and of calm. And here you are, just breathing with thousands of people, all with the same intention. I believe that we are communally and globally connected, and that our energy can multiply as we all have the same ideals and as we all have the same intention. And today, the intention, as we breathe in that we come closer together, that we find love within our hearts for others, that we don't find ourselves separated by our economic status. Exhale that all the way out. Just as you breathe in, that we can help and influence others as we share conscious ceremony, as we share conscious food, as we share conscious water. And then you exhale all the pollutants, all the GMOs, all the ideas that we're supposed to subscribe to be healthy. We breathe in the natural way, 4 counts in, and we exhale 6 counts out, all the way down, all the way down. We are a one giant consciousness, just like the mycelium that runs underneath the trees through the forest. We are one giant consciousness, that we are able to influence our neighbors, our community. Just as our elders once influenced us, we stopped listening, and as we breathe in, we are here to affirm we are listening. I am listening, I am listening. And as you let go of expectation, you let go of controlling, and you simply reside. Taking 4 more breaths like this. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 6, all the way down. 3, 2, 3 more breaths. In for 4, out for 6. Breathing together globally with our intention. Breathe in for 4. Belly rises, the heart lifts, and then you release all the way down for 6. This is our last heart conscious breath here, this heart coherence. Breathe in for 4. Exhale for 6. As you get to the bottom, all of us take a giant breath all the way to the top and hold it. Filling your lungs, your space within the space. Take another sip in, just another, and release it fully with a sigh all the way down. As you move back into your normal breath, your space of being, where you live, be gentle to yourself. Be kind. We can't change the planet in a day, but we can influence our neighbors. We can help those who are suffering. We can alleviate suffering by simply showing up in an authentic way that says, your problem is also my problem. We reside in the same community. How can I help? When we realize that money is simply an energy exchange, when we realize food is an exchange of energy, when we realize water is an inherent right of all beings to have clean water. Our hearts open, our minds open, and this is where we're truly free. Thanks for joining me today on Life as an Observer.